Hello, everybody, and welcome to Echo Live. My name is Anna, and I'm coming to you from the Michigan Science Center's Echo Distance Learning Program. Today, we are celebrating one of our favorite days of the year at the Science Center, which is Star Wars Day. Hopefully, we have some Star Wars fans out there in the audience. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat feature of whichever platform you are watching through. I know we have friends joining us on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and in Zoom. So go ahead, tell us where you're watching from in the chat. You can tell us what grade you're in, or maybe even tell us your favorite Star Wars character. Let's see if anyone comes up with my favorite Star Wars character. Let's see if you come up with that one in the chat. So the chat feature is your way of communicating with me throughout the program. If you have any questions about our Star Wars themed activities that we're going to be trying today, maybe questions about how or if you should try some of these things at home, you can ask those in the chat and we'll save some time at the end to talk about those questions that you have. I'm seeing some awesome answers about your favorite Star Wars characters. Jennifer tells me that Rey is her favorite Star Wars character. A couple people telling me Princess Leia. I see a good friend, David. If you need a moment to think, David, what is your favorite Star Wars character? I'm curious to know. Lots of Princess Leia fans out there. She is a great Star Wars character. Can't quite say she's my favorite, but she is a great one. All right. Rey and Mace Windu. So Don can't even choose between the two, but that's okay. Having two favorite characters is a great way to enjoy Star Wars. Let's see, Chewbacca, more great answers. I love that you are so familiar with Star Wars, that we have so many Star Wars fans out there, especially Zoe in Zoom tells us that she just absolutely loves Star Wars. David tells me that Darth Vader is, of course, his favorite character. And David is pretty close. Actually, my favorite Star Wars character is Kylo Ren, kind of a newer character in the most recent movies, but I think that his character is the best. So keep telling us about your favorite Star Wars character. I love seeing that we have so many different characters being mentioned, ones that I wasn't even thinking of. So we've got some different Star Wars themed experiments and activities to show here on Echo Live today. The first one we'll talk about is how we can use the Force. Now, we're a few light years off from really being able to use the Force. I know maybe out there we've got some Jedis in training that aren't quite willing to share their knowledge of the Force yet with the world. But we can use science in order to channel the Force as well. So we are going to start by making objects levitate using the force of science, or really the force of static electricity. So we've talked about static electricity on Echo Live in the past. We've said that static electricity is just an imbalance or a difference in charge. And the easiest way that we can create static electricity or that difference in charge is just by rubbing two objects together. So if you've ever rubbed a balloon on your hair, tell me in the chat, what happens to your hair? If you were to rub a balloon on your hair, or maybe put it near your clothing, what starts to happen? Can tell me what you feel, what you see. Let's see how familiar you are with that force of static electricity. Think about it, think about it. Yeah, a couple of people describing the sensation that they feel, that it starts to feel fuzzy or staticky. Yeah, it starts to get staticky. Maybe if you put something near your hair, right? Your hair, if it's kind of long like mine, might start to stand up and start to look pretty crazy. Maybe start to look like a Wookiee even with some crazy hair days. So we can start to create static electricity in a few different ways. So if you don't have a balloon, you really just need two objects that you can rub together. A great thing you can use for this is even just something like a cotton t-shirt. If you have something fuzzy, like I have this fuzzy, really soft kind of wool jacket, this works really well. But even a cotton t-shirt or a wool t-shirt will work really, really well for this experiment. Now, I'm going to be using this as my force device. So this is what's going to channel the force for this experiment. So since I'm still a Jedi in training, I need tools. I can't quite yet do it with my hands. But what we're going to do is we're going to charge up some pieces of plastic bag. So I've taken a plastic grocery bag, just cut it into little strips so that it forms rings. And then we're just gonna rub those against our soft object. So it could be a t-shirt, could even be the one that you're wearing, or a really soft jacket, just like this one. And when you rub these two objects together, when you rub the plastic against your soft object or your soft material, you start to charge it up. You start to take away its electrons. And we'll go ahead and we'll just set that off to the side because we need to charge up another object as well. So I'm charging up this piece of PVC rod or PVC pipe. I'm going to do the same thing. Just going to rub it back and forth. And if you were here in my studio, you're hearing this crackling noise. I can actually hear some of those tiny little static shocks as we generate a charge here on my force device. Now, can take this, and once we've got it really good and charged up, we're just going to take something that's not charged to lift up our plastic bag, and we should get our object to levitate. If it's not working, all we're going to do is maybe try a little bit of a smaller one. So as we said, still a Jedi in training. If you try this at home, send us a video, tag us on Facebook or on Instagram. Show us your video of you using the Force today for May the 4th, which is Star Wars Day. All right, so we've got a charged up plastic piece there. We'll use our t-shirt this time, and we'll charge up our PVC rod. So again, as we rub them together, we're just creating a static difference. We're creating a static charge here on the rod. We'll toss our ring into the air, and that one's starting to work. There we go. And we can see that as long as I don't let the ring touch me and lose its charge or touch another object like our Tesla coil there, we can use the Force and we can actually get this piece of bag to levitate. Now this could make for a pretty cool video. So if you do decide to try this at home, again, make sure you tag us. You can even try using a virtual background like mine and show us how good you are at channeling the force of static electricity. Now, I also have an engineering design challenge that you're able to try at home. So in Star Wars, we often see spaceships just like these. So I think this one is, what is this one called? An X-Wing. We've got a TIE fighter off to the side. So there's all sorts of spaceships. And what's really, really cool is if you look up online, you can actually figure out how to build some of these famous Star Wars aircrafts out of paper. So there's lots of YouTube tutorials, or there's a great website called instructables.com where they will actually teach you how to make some of these different famous Star Wars ships out of paper. But my engineering design challenge is, how can we make these devices fly better than if we were to just throw them with our hand? So if you've ever thrown a paper airplane before, you know that it takes a good amount of force. You really have to move your whole arm in order to get it to fly. You can't really just use your fingers. You really need to wind up. But what if we were launching from a shorter distance? So I've got kind of my replicas here. So I've got my Lego kit of, this is Anakin Skywalker's starfighter. But I've rebuilt this out of paper, just following, again, one of those YouTube tutorials. Can zoom in on it to show you a little bit closer. So I've recreated my version of Anakin Skywalker's starfighter. And all I've done is take a paper clip and put it right in the end of the plane and then hold it in place with a staple. Now, my engineering design challenge for you is, how can we make this airplane fly using a device that's able to launch paper airplanes? Now, I thought a little bit about our lesson on simple machines when I built my launching device. So what I did is I actually built a ramp. So I took a few pieces of cardboard. I constructed somewhat of a ramp here. So if I balance these two things on top of each other, take another closer look down at the table. All I've done is I've kind of secured a rubber band across it, built it kind of like a ramp, made it look kind of cool and pointy again, just like with our Star Wars theme. And then I can actually take the end, the paper clip on the end of my paper airplane, and I can use this to create a force and launch my paper airplane pretty far. I'm going to zoom out just so we can actually see how well my launcher works, if it works. Let's see. All right, so we'll scoot back, give it lots and lots of space. I can use my ramp to actually change my height or my incline. So again, a ramp or an inclined plane was one of our simple machines from the episode we talked about on Echo Live. So all I'm going to do is pull back, create some of that potential or stored energy, build it up in the rubber band, and then launch. So I also have an X-wing here. Again, just paper clipped or stapled a paper clip right there on the end of my X-wing. And then we'll just go ahead, ready? Converting our potential energy to kinetic energy in 3, 2, 1. Not so great, but our X-wing flew, or our Anakin Skywalker's starfighter flew pretty far. So I'll give you one more look at my ramp system here. So again, it's just a few pieces of cardboard. I've cut some notches in there so that I could stretch my rubber band across. And then I'm able to use that to convert my potential or stored energy into kinetic, which throws my paper airplane pretty far with pretty little effort on my part. So this is a challenge I would love if you tried at home. See if you can use different materials or if you could recreate mine. Show me how you can launch maybe your paper airplane design using either some of those simple machines or a creation that you've built. And it doesn't have to be out of cardboard. Maybe you have something like Legos laying around. I wouldn't recommend using your Legos to build your starfighter or launching this one across the room. They are pretty delicate, but you could use the Legos to build your launcher and see if you can create something that works even better than mine does. All right, let's pause for a moment and let's see if anyone online has any questions about our 2 try this at home experiments, because our last 2 experiments of the day are do not try this at home experiments. That's half the fun of tuning into Echo Live, is when we have really exciting holidays like May the 4th that we can show you some really exciting science that's maybe not so safe to try at home. So if you have any questions, I'm seeing a couple of friends in Zoom. I can see your chats. I can absolutely see you guys. I'm sending in some comments and your votes for your favorite Star Wars characters. So I can see you. Big thumbs up if you do have questions. Go ahead and use that chat. I would be happy to answer them. If you don't have any questions just yet, keep thinking about those. And we will keep coming back to those throughout the program. I can't tell if my YouTube video, oh, there it is. There we go. Everyone's streaming. So again, use that chat or comments feature in order to ask your questions. And then we'll move on to our last 2 experiments. Now, if you remember this device, we talked about this one in one of our high voltage episodes. This is a Tesla coil. And what this Tesla coil gives us the ability to do is create a lightsaber of sorts. Now, I've got a pretty awesome lightsaber here, but this one, just a toy. So far, we're still working on lightsaber technology here on Earth with our human technology. Star Wars is pretty far ahead, but it's something that we're working on. And I can actually use this Tesla coil in order to create a lightsaber right here inside my studio. If you remember the way this Tesla coil works, it's actually plugged into the wall. And when we power it on, it's going to send the electricity from the plug through these copper coils, which are teeny tiny and wrapped around thousands of times around this thicker part of our Tesla coil. Once it goes through those coils, the electricity comes under pressure. It starts to build up pressure until it reaches the top of our Tesla coil, where it exits through something called a spark gap. When it exits, it's going to shoot lightning bolts all over the room. And the way that works is similar to when you put your thumb over a hose in the summertime, right? The water starts to spray all over because it's under a lot of pressure and it has a narrow opening to exit through. So this is going to shoot lightning bolts just like your hose might shoot water. And it might remind you of another Star Wars character who has some pretty interesting powers. Once we turn this on and it starts to shoot lightning bolts, tell me if you know the name of that Star Wars character, or if you have a guess now, you can send it in. For this, our plastic lightsaber here is pretty well insulated. It's not going to work great for this experiment. Thankfully, this one runs on batteries. But what I have is a fluorescent light bulb. And we've talked about light bulbs also on Echo Live in the past. So if you remember this experiment, we've done this a couple times with our mini Tesla, or our handheld Tesla coil. We're going to turn that light bulb into a lightsaber. So this requires me to turn off the lights, and the Tesla coil can be a little bit loud. Zoom should cancel out the noise. So it shouldn't be too loud for the audience, but if the noise does bother you, you can just go ahead and cover up your ears until the loud noise stops. Once our lights come back on, you'll know it's safe to uncover your ears. That loud noise will stop if Zoom doesn't by chance cancel it out. I'm seeing some great guesses for characters that maybe remind you of lightning or have some interesting lightning powers. But let's go ahead. We're going to turn off our lights, our studio lights here. It would actually help if I hit my virtual background as well. That way we don't have any distractions. All right, there we go. Virtual background off. Our lights are coming off next, and we're going to be seeing our lightning experiment in just a moment. So let's go ahead and I'll hit this light. Ta-da. All right, here we go with our Tesla coil experiment in 3, 2, 1. Pretty cool stuff. Now, I saw a few guesses for which character that might have reminded you of in Star Wars. If you said Emperor Palpatine, you're thinking exactly what I'm thinking. Emperor Palpatine had a really awesome ability in order to shoot lightning bolts out of his fingers. And a little bit later on in Star Wars, someone else actually got that power as well. So we'll go ahead, get my virtual background on here. And we do have one final experiment before we head out for the day. And we are actually going to use something, again, that we should not try at home. And we are actually going to freeze one of our Lego minifigures here in some carbonite. Now, if you remember this scene from Star Wars, you know that Jabba the Hutt froze Han Solo in carbonite. But unfortunately, carbonite is fictional. We've not yet discovered it here on Earth. That doesn't mean that it might not exist elsewhere in the galaxy. But here on Earth, we're going to have to rely on some more common materials, things that we can actually come by or purchase. And so for this, we're actually going to freeze one of our Lego figures in liquid nitrogen. So what we're going to do is take some liquid nitrogen out of my big device, which we call a dewar. So we've got our dewar here, which holds our liquid nitrogen, keeps it really, really cold. We, of course, are going to practice good lab safety. So I'll pop on my cryogenic gloves and my safety goggles. We're going to take some of our liquid nitrogen and pour it just right here inside our Pyrex beaker. Go ahead. Now, liquid nitrogen is super, super cold stuff. Does anyone remember from one of our past episodes of Echo Live, or maybe from your own prior knowledge, just how cold is liquid nitrogen? Maybe you know the exact temperature, and maybe you know it in Celsius or Fahrenheit. It's really, really cold, much colder than the freezing point of water, because even to exist as a liquid, this stuff has to be super, super cold, even just to be a liquid. So you can see that as it warms up, even to room temperature, inside the beaker, you might be able to see just a little bit of movement as this liquid nitrogen boils at room temperature. Now, unfortunately for this experiment, I'm going to have to sacrifice one of our Lego figures here. So for this, we're going to take R2-D2. He's a trooper. He's been through a lot in the Star Wars universe. We'll just drop him down there in another Pyrex beaker. We're going to fill him with some water. And then we are going to flash freeze him in carbonite in 3, 2, 1. Now, I see a couple great guesses. A lot of people know the temperature of liquid nitrogen. Don tells me that it is negative 320 degrees Fahrenheit. You are correct. This stuff is so cold that when it interacts with the water inside the beaker, it's going to rapidly freeze it into solid ice. So R2-D2, as he's trapped inside there, is slowly being frozen. We can try to get some of that liquid nitrogen to evaporate more quickly if we just add some warm air. And as our cloud begins to clear, you can see that our poor R2-D2 is almost completely trapped in ice. Let just the rest of that liquid nitrogen boil away. Remember that liquid nitrogen has to be negative 321 degrees Fahrenheit in order to be a liquid. If it gets any warmer than that, it immediately starts to evaporate, but it is cold enough that it can freeze the liquid water that it interacts with, turning it into a solid, because we know water only needs to be 32 degrees Fahrenheit in order to freeze into solid water, which we call ice. And now poor R2-D2, completely trapped inside our carbonite reaction here. We kind of scratch away some of our frost on that beaker. We can see him trapped in there, hopefully not for hundreds of years or thousands of years as Jabba the Hutt might want, but really just until this water warms back up to room temperature and that solid water turns back into liquid water. So don't worry too much about R2-D2. He'll be okay in probably a few hours. And so don't worry too much about him. Maybe we'll check back in tomorrow and see what the status of our carbonite reaction is. But this stuff really did solidify. If you look inside the cup, it's definitely not going anywhere anytime soon. So that's all we've got for our Star Wars experiments today. We hope you'll tune back in tomorrow so we can do more liquid nitrogen experiments. Again, we can check back in on R2-D2, make sure everything's all right with him when we stop back in tomorrow. If you do have any questions about our experiments, go ahead and type them in the chat. A lot of people telling us they are worried about R2, but we'll see what happens to him tomorrow. You'll just have to tune back in to see and make sure that he's all right. But as always, we want to say a big thank you to our sponsors like the Ford Motor Company Fund and Denso, who allow us to bring these Echo Live programs to you at home every single weekday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. If you are enjoying these programs, you can share this on your Facebook page. Make sure that you are liking and subscribing to the Michigan Science Center on Facebook or YouTube if you'd like to be alerted when we go live every single weekday. And if you're looking for at-home science experiments that you can try, of course, visit our website, which is listed right here on the bottom of the slide. If you look for at-home science, you can find experiments that are safe to try at home. Unfortunately, liquid nitrogen, not so safe to try at home. It seems like people aren't so happy. They don't want to freeze their R2-D2 minifigures. But if you're looking for safe experiments, fun experiments, that is the place to find them. No questions coming in just yet. That's okay. We hope we'll see you back here tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. And until then, may the 4th be with you.